What's up everybody, my name is Remmy Evans and welcome to the channel. This video might be a little awkward. Starting YouTube is something I want to do for a long time, but I'm very camera shy. I've never been on camera before, so I'm stepping outside the comfort zone to bring you guys on a journey of building my hopefully over 1,000 wheel horsepower bagged STI.
If I'm being honest, loving you the hardest thing to do, so I keep to myself. I feel like I'm falling in and out of consciousness. Yeah.
Before we get into anything else, I would like to properly introduce myself. My name is Remmy Evans, and I'm 21 years old, and I live in Spokane, Washington. Roughly about 3 years ago is when I bought my first cool car, per se. It was a 2009 WRX hatch. From then, I started meeting a lot of people in my area, Spokane, and at the time I was living in Bellingham, attending college. That car, Subaru, got me into the car scene, and through that Subaru, I met a dear friend of mine, Josh Bader, who a lot of you guys may know for building Subarus. He built my motor on my hatch about almost 3 years ago, and that's when I met him. He convinced me to make the step up and buy the 15 Plus STI. From then, he's been a huge influence on me with building Subarus. So this whole year, a little over a year now, we have been building my STI. It hasn't been on the street in a little over a year. It's seen maybe 300 miles. Part of that is this car has seen multiple different setups in this last year, starting with just a basic fueling, wastegate, stuff like that. And then Josh made me do the push to do an FP Black setup and try to make 700, 600 wheel. At the time, people were saying you couldn't make power on a stock block. So Josh and I looked at each other and we're like, we're gonna prove you guys wrong. So him and I both decided to try to push power on a stock block, and that's when I started heavily modifying my STI. While I started building my stock block killer, is what we used to call it, still call it, I really wanted to learn how to build Subarus myself, as opposed to just sending it to Josh and him doing it for me. Josh was a great mentor in teaching me everything I know about building Subarus, as I'm still very much a beginner, but I've learned quite a bit through him. So a goal of mine was to build that car myself. Of course, he was alongside me to guide me in anything I needed. The car took about a week to finish, and the day before racing, we were tuning my car, and a fatal error on my end, I did not secure a vacuum line to the wastegate, and the vacuum line popped off and took out my motor. So that set us back quite a bit, and I missed the first race day. Almost a year ago exactly now. So that was a huge downside. It was a huge learning experience for me to zip tie your boost lines. The car showed on the virtual dyno 807 wheel horsepower, which is crazy, and it took out the motor shortly after. After that, we decided to throw another stock motor in it. Same setup, but we wanted to try to get on the track with the stock motor and try to break the world record. We put the motor in, put it all together, and the car lasted a lot longer this time, a couple months, but there was always small issues, oil leaks that I was continuously chasing. And after I got the whole car done, the car ran for a while, went to a couple meets, was able to drive it around, and then I got greedy for power. And late night, we threw it on the dyno to try to make over 700 on an FP Black, and on the dyno, it took out a piston. So that left me to my most recent setup when I decided to go rotated with the 6870 and still retain the stock block to try to get more power. I was a little greedy. I really was determined to get a stock block pass and try to break the world record. So I knew going into this I was going to be going through a lot of stock block, which I was perfectly okay with. But during this, we were trying to make a deadline to try to get to IFO. And this event, we were bringing, it was like 8 cars with us down to Seattle. A couple days before, we decided to throw some rods and pistons, essentially Josh's stage 3 block with 1/2-inch head studs though. No closed decking, still open. During this, I decided to also build my heads. So I have fully built heads, ported everything, and we were essentially on track to make race day. And hopefully with a motor that would take a little bit of abuse. During this, since it was on such a time crunch, there were no machine shops open or that could get my motor in to drill it out for 1/2-inch head studs. I decided in such a time crunch that I would drill out the block for 1/2-inch head studs myself. Knowing this, I knew I was either going to succeed or I was going to strip out the threads in the block. After doing so, everything looked like it was good. I was holding the head studs. We had the motor together, started assembling it, ready to drop in the STI. We busted ass for 12 hours, stayed up very late to get the car together because it needed to go to fabrication at Ranch Built the next day to get some custom charge pipes made because I went with the forward-facing manifold. Doing so, the car made it to Ranch Built. Everything was fabricated. My car is now at Josh's ready to tune. As I was doing can break-in, I noticed lots of smoke that just piled into the STI. I went outside my car to see why so much smoke was filling up the car and outside. I noticed a pool of oil and coolant under the car. It was, at this point, it was 2, 3 a.m. and we've all had a very late night. So I just called it a night and left the car at Josh's and came the next morning to find out my head gaskets had failed. The head was not on the block enough. So I missed race day again, missed IFO, went down with the team still, had a great time down there. So after IFO, I brought the car back to my shop, took it apart to see what the failure was, and as I was taking the heads off the block and taking the head studs out, I noticed it pulled threads from the block, which is why the heads were not seated completely on the block and why my head gaskets had failed. So now current time, we're waiting for the new setup, which the last piece will show up momentarily, which will be talked about in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on your post notifications to see what we have in store for this bagged, one-of-a-kind, 1,000+ wheel horsepower build.